Are your players bored with drills that don't carry over to games? There's a better way. With games-based coaching, every drill looks and feels like the real thing. In this video, you'll learn 7 powerful benefits of games-based coaching from 3-time state championship coach Nate Sanderson. Practicing this way will result in more intensity and effort, smarter decision-making, faster skill development, higher player engagement, and better transfer to real games. When drills feel like games, your practice transforms, and so do your players. Before we get to the video, be sure to click the link in the description to get access to a free PDF that includes 10 small-sided games for player development, complete with diagrams, descriptions, and bonus tips. Now let's get started.
If you put them in situations where they're encouraged to be creative and to experiment with their skills and to try new things, not only are they going to problem solve in your drills and in your practices, but when they encounter situations in games that maybe they aren't prepared for, when they beat somebody on the perimeter and there's 2 help defenders, they've already been in the habit of being creative and finding new ways to solve those problems, even if they haven't practiced them before. And isn't that what we want? We want players to be independent, and we want players that are able to problem solve on their own so that when they see those situations in games, they're able to be successful, even if we haven't told them exactly what the right play is or what the right move is in that context. One of the important factors then in the drills that you're going to see in this DVD is that we are creating random situations. The game of basketball is not predictable. You can't script what's going to happen one possession to the next. Even when you stay in the same offense with the same spacing and the same actions, when the ball reverses from one side to the other, the defense may play it differently. They may guard differently from game to game, from possession to possession. So players have to get used to responding to what they perceive in the environment. That's the beauty of using a game-based approach. You may use one particular drill with defenders, a help side defender and an on-ball defender, and they may guard it differently depending on what the offense does. Consequently, the offense is forced to try something different and to respond to a different action from the defense, just as they would in a game. It isn't a matter of repeating the same technique over and over again until they can do it without making a mistake. It's about getting players to be able to adapt to what defense is trying to do to them. And by encouraging your players to play live defense and play aggressively and try to stop the individual offensive player from scoring, and having them do that in different ways in the context of these drills, your players are learning how to play. They're learning how to respond in a variable situation, which is exactly what they're going to encounter in games. One of the questions that I often get about our game-based approach is, how do you incorporate these drills into a team practice? So let me explain to you some of the objectives that we try to accomplish by using this game-based approach when we're planning a practice. First of all, we don't ever want players to be standing around in practice. We don't like kids to be standing in line. We don't like them necessarily to just be on the baseline watching and waiting their turn. Players learn by doing. You get better at the game of basketball by playing the game of basketball. So one advantage to being able to play small-sided games like what you've seen in this DVD, whether it's 1-on-1, 1-on-2, 2-on-1, 2-on-2, etc., is that we can use all the goals in our gym and divide our team up into, in this case, teams of 2, and be able to practice where everybody is involved all the time. So in a standard gym, a lot of gyms are going to have obviously your main baskets and 2 side baskets on either side. That's 6 goals that you can use to divide kids up to play 2-on-2, whether it's 2 groups of 2 and have 4 kids to a basket, or oftentimes we'll play with 3 groups of 2 at a basket and be able to rotate from there. Everybody is playing. Everybody is attacking the basket. Everybody is moving away from the ball. We don't have anybody that has to learn by watching. Everybody is learning by doing. Now, when we divide our kids up, we'll also divide them by their ability level. And I don't necessarily just, put the best 6 kids together and then the next best 6 kids together, but we want the challenge at that basket to be appropriate for those players. So you might see at one end of the floor, our varsity players playing 2-on-1 plus 1, because we have to create a more challenging situation for the offense because the offensive players are so good. They're so skilled and they're so experienced that we have to make it a difficult challenge for them to get better. However, at the other end of the gym, our JV players or our freshman players, our younger players might not be ready for 2-on-1 plus 1. There may not be enough time for them to make good decisions or for them to see the space on the floor to create the best opportunities. And so they might be doing a 2-on-1 situation, but they're playing 2-on-1 instead of 2-on-1 plus 1, or 2-on-2 instead of 2-on-3. In either case, they're all working on the same skills, but they're doing it at a challenge level that's appropriate to the players that are at that basket. And again, this is part of the mastery of a game-based approach. It's making the appropriate level of challenge for the players that are in that particular drill. Now, another way that we might divide up our team or our players at the different baskets depends on perhaps their positions. In other words, if you have post players that are at the back end of your press, that, as we do in our press break, that sometimes end up in a 2-on-1 situation against our opponent's goalies, then we might put all of our post players together and play 2-on-1. Just not 2-on-1 plus 1 or 2-on-2, but just get them used to taking 2 or 3 dribbles and making a decision with the basketball. Our guards then might be playing 2-on-1 plus 1 in another part of the gym. Again, trying to make that challenge appropriate to what they experience in the games. The most important thing is this: our players are all actively involved in situations that happen in games. And that's one of the beauties of taking a small-sided approach and using a game-based philosophy to construct your drills.
Are your players making smart decisions under pressure? If not, it's because your practices aren't game-like enough. As Coach Nate Sanderson says, it's time to train like the game plays. If you're ready to do just that, check out Nate Sanderson's game-based training system, a revolutionary program designed to build high IQ players who thrive in real game situations. The system includes 50 small-sided game-mimicking drills, 6+ hours of practical on-court video teaching, and an ebook with scalable progressions, making it perfect for players of any age or skill level. This was created by 3-time state championship coach Nate Sanderson and enables you to capture his championship building methods and bring them to your gym. It's flex-friendly too. It's designed for just 2 to 4 players. So whether you're short on players or have your entire team, your practice stays powerful. Elevate your team, build smarter, tougher players, and turn your practices into game-ready environments. Grab Sanderson's game-based training system now. Your edge this system awaits. Learn more at the link in the description.
And I'd like to say something about failure, because if you're going to practice this way and you're going to put your players in challenging situations, they're going to fail. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to try things that don't work, and they're going to get frustrated. In fact, you'll see some of the players in our drills today, they were frustrated because they weren't able to finish or they weren't able to be successful when playing against 2 defenders. And you have to encourage your players that that's okay, that failure is just as much feedback as success. If a player makes a move, let's say in a 1-on-2 situation, they beat the first defender, but they struggle to finish against the second defender. Maybe they try a floater and it gets blocked. Maybe they try to go off 1 foot at the basket and they get the ball blocked out of bounds. What they're learning is that doesn't work in that situation. As a coach, I don't have to tell them, don't ever do that again, or always go off of 2 feet. I don't have to harp on them or yell at them. I simply have to put them back in the drill and let them try something else. This is called implicit learning. If you follow the assumption that a game-based approach is the best approach for learning, then it only makes sense that all of your players, whether they're at the varsity level, the JV level, the middle school level, or the youth level, would benefit from doing things that are going to accelerate their learning the most. And so yes, we think that using a game-based approach is absolutely appropriate for youth level teams. Now again, you may have to teach some things initially before you immediately throw them into a 2-on-1 or a 2-on-2 passing situation. Like they may have to learn how to jump stop without any defense. They may have to learn how to throw an outside hand pass. They may have to learn how to shoot off of a jump stop. But I wouldn't emphasize that nearly as much as I would putting them in a 2-on-1 situation so that they're combining not only the physical skill of the jump stop, but then adding and incorporating the decision-making factor of do I pass or do I shoot, where do I jump stop, how to perceive the defense, etc. Again, going back to the constraints that as a coach you have complete control over, if your offense is struggling in a game-based drill where the defense has an advantage for whatever reason, there are ways to handicap the defense. You can start them in a chair, you can give the offense more space, you can give the offense more time, you can put other limitations on the defense. There's lots of different ways that you can make it, again, the appropriate challenge. And that may look different at the youth level than it does in a varsity practice. To be honest with you, at the high school level, we're doing a lot of 2-on-1 plus 1 when we're working on our decision making in transition, because our players are ready for that, and that's what they experience in their games. In the youth game, you may get a lot more situations that are 1-on-1 plus 1, where the trail player is another offensive player. And that might be another way to design your run around the cone drills, where it's just 1-on-1, and then the chase player is an offensive player because they're getting back before the rest of the defense. In any case, I think whenever you add defense to a drill or you make something a game, you make it competitive, you keep score, and you structure it in the same way as to what they're going to experience in their actual games, learning is going to increase, retention is going to increase, and the transfer of what they're practicing to what they're experiencing in their games is going to increase. It's going to be more effective and it's going to be more efficient. And certainly those things are going to benefit youth teams just as much as they would our varsity teams. We would use a game-based approach to prepare for a specific opponent simply by changing the rules either for the offense or for the defense, depending on what we're focused on. So for example, if we were going to play a team that was going to be in man-to-man and really pressure the ball and, let's say, switch all of our away screens. So if we set pin down screens or flare screens away from the ball, they're going to switch all screens. Then when we're playing 2-on-2 with some weak side action, we would have those players, those defensive players in the drill, switch every screen. And when the ball is received, we would have them get up and pressure the ball just like what they would experience from our upcoming opponent. Again, we still want to have them problem solving, right? And so if a defense is going to play us in a pack line, then remember we oriented our defense or our defensive players to the ball in a lot of our 2-on-2 situations. So we would just change the rules of the defense to match what we're preparing for on offense. Conversely, if we're trying to use a game-based approach to prepare our defense, let's say for a pick and roll situation, when we play 2-on-2 with a ball screen, we would try to generate those ball screens from a similar angle and a similar place on the floor that our upcoming opponent likes to ball screen out of. Maybe they like to come to the middle from the wing, maybe they like a ball screen in transition. So we would try to create 2-on-2 situations or game-like situations for our defense, maybe even more so than for our offense, in order to be able to problem solve how do we stop those actions. And that's where you can coach, whether you want them to hedge or you want them to switch or whatever your philosophy is for covering a pick and roll. You want to try to have your players doing it in a situation that is as similar as possible to what your upcoming opponent is going to do. Now, I also understand that the game is a game of 5-on-5, and so you might play 2-on-2 pick and roll defensive coverage, but understanding that on Friday night you're going to be playing that in a 5-on-5 context. And my argument for using 2-on-2 in small-sided games in your pregame practice is that it's so much more efficient. If the action that's going to hurt you is a ball screen, not necessarily what happens away from the ball, then you want your players to practice the ball screen defense and how you want to guard it. If you do that in 2-on-2 and you give the offense one attack, we've counted this. Every 6 seconds, you can get a two-man ball screen attack roughly every 6 seconds in a practice. That's 10 repetitions for your defense in a minute. Now you think about if you went 5-on-5 in the half court, or you went up and down and went score, stop, score, or played a 5-on-5 scrimmage and emphasized ball screen defense in your 5-on-5, you're getting maybe a ball screen defensive situation every 10 seconds, maybe 12 seconds, maybe more than that if you're going up and down and waiting for the defense to get back. In this way, we can be the most efficient in drilling or in practicing the situation that is most dangerous to us in our game. So we completely agree that small-sided games and a game-based approach is absolutely valuable for preparing for your upcoming opponents because it's more efficient than just going through a 5-on-5 scout, as we used to do in our practices. Now, the majority of this DVD is focused on offense, individual offense, and two-player combinations trying to find scoring opportunities. But as we've said throughout, you can use these small-sided games in 2-on-2 situations or even 2-on-1 situations to practice your defense. So all of your defensive coverages, whether it's how to negotiate screens away from the ball, how to negotiate ball screens, how you want to guard players straight up in closeouts, if you want to force the baseline or you want to force the ball to the middle, all of those things can be emphasized in your 2-on-1, 2-on-2, 1-on-1 games. You can coach defense just as much as you can coach offense, while your offensive players are also getting better at their skill development by attacking your defense. One of the ways that we like to engage our athletes in our game-based approach is by asking them questions. In other words, we might set up a 2-on-1+1 situation, and rather than talk through the reads or talk through proper positioning or how we want to fill the backside or whatever the particulars might be that you're trying to teach in that situation, we'll often just put our players in the game or put them into the drill and let them experiment and let them fail and let them figure out what works and what doesn't work. And then rather than stop and have me teach and tell them what they should or shouldn't be doing, we'll often ask them questions. And typically we're asking players this: what worked? when you are on offense in a 2-on-1 situation with a trail defender, and you were in a group of 2 that scored, what worked? Why did it work? And you'll hear players say, well, I was aggressive going to the basket, or I made the pass at the right time, or I threw a bounce pass, or I was ready to shoot it when I caught it, or whatever it might be. The same teaching points that I would often give them, they'll tell each other with the right amount of questioning, and it becomes their learning. And somebody that wasn't successful, let's say you have another player that was 0 for 5 in all of their offensive situations, all of a sudden, like, they're listening to these groups that they couldn't stop and saying, oh yeah, I should have used a pass fake. And they're writing it down and they're thinking, next time I'll use a pass fake. But it came from their peers rather than their coach. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to coach, or that doesn't absolve me from all responsibility and all learning from our players, but it does put them in a situation to be able to communicate with each other, to be able to articulate and recognize what worked, and then also what didn't work. And that would be another question that we would often follow up with. Okay, if this worked on offense, what didn't work? Players might say, well, I turned the corner and I was slow, or I took 4 dribbles to get to the basket, or I threw the pass too early or too late. But when you ask them questions, the chances that they're, number one, going to recall what just happened and be able to learn from it is much higher, because you're engaging them immediately after their repetitions. And then by sharing that information, again, they're learning from each other rather than always looking to me for the answers. Now, when you think about how that translates to a game, isn't that what we want as coaches? We want players to be able to be in situations, to be able to solve problems together or on their own, by communicating on the floor, by sharing what worked or what didn't work, so that they can be responsible for their improvement and aren't reliant on me to take a timeout or to get to halftime to be able to fix our problems. By practicing that way and asking questions and asking them to reflect on what has worked and what didn't work, the learning becomes theirs and it becomes more efficient.
We hope you enjoyed this games-based coaching video. If you want instant access to 10 small-sided games for player development, make sure to click the link in the description so you can gain access to a free PDF featuring diagrams, descriptions, and bonus tips. Again, if you incorporate these drills into your practices, you will see your players improve throughout the season, making them and your team more successful. Make sure to click and subscribe and then click the bell button so you're the first to know when we release more new videos. Thanks for watching.